Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Today, Sushma Swaraj broke her silence and presented her defence in the Lok Sabha. It happened, of course, without the opposition present. But was it convincing, or did it sidestep key issues of concern? That's the debate in part 2, when the Congress's Abhishek Singhvi will challenge the BJP's GVL Narasimha Rao. But first, yesterday's terrorist attack on the Udhampur highway and the capture of a Pakistani terrorist have raised key questions that the media is struggling to answer. These questions go to the very heart of what happened, as well as what light it sheds on the terror threat India faces and the prospects of any Indo-Pak talks. In part 1, I shall interview a man who is more experienced and more knowledgeable than most others. He's former National Security Advisor and the former head of the Intelligence Bureau, M.K. Narayanan. But first, a brief recap of the issues that need to be addressed.
He sticks out his tongue. He smiles. He calmly answers a volley of questions. The unnerving calm, composure, even cheerfulness of Naveed, alias Usman, not even an hour after his dramatic capture following the bloody attack near Udhampur. His hands tied behind his back, he reveals absolutely no nervousness. With uncanny indifference, the terrorist converses with his captors, nodding, gesturing with his chin, turning around to answer a question from behind him.
कितने बंदे थे? दो ही थे? नहीं, असली बात बताओ कितने थे? नहीं पता ना। जो छोटे-छोटे बच्चे मारे यार, उनका क्या कसूर था? वो क्या करते हैं आप क्या दुश्मनी है हमारे से हिंदुस्तान से? आपको क्या दुश्मनी है? पैसे मिलते हैं आपको? पे मिलती है, सैलरी मिलती है, तो क्यों जा रहा अपनी जिंदगी बर्बाद करते हो आप? हेलो, अच्छा काम करने से मजा है। अच्छा काम करो, दिहाड़ी लगाओ, दिहाड़ी लगाओ। दिहाड़ी क्या लगाओ? मानना ही मानना है।
A hardened terrorist, trained and ready for the worst, gives away no panic whatsoever. A shattering reminder perhaps of the regimen Pakistani terrorists schooled to bleed India are made to undergo in terror camps on the other side. Bureau Report, India Today.
Welcome back, and I'm now joined by former National Security Advisor and the former head of the Intelligence Bureau, M.K. Narayanan. Mr. Narayanan, let's start with the terrorist who was caught yesterday. We saw him on camera showing no remorse or fear, smiling and boasting that he had come to kill Hindus and that it was going to be fun to do it. As a former head of the IB and a former NSA, what impression did you form of him?
I'm not quite sure about this this event, because I think he looks almost like a put-on job. I can't imagine somebody who has been caught like this being so calm, and so he's obviously not one of the highly trained terrorists, because the kind of things that he has been done, it almost looks as if he wanted to be caught. And what he had to say, he made an impression. It doesn't matter what happens to him. I think he's a dispensable element as far as the Lashkar is concerned.
Now, although he was reportedly armed with an AK-47 and took 3 hostages, it seems that the hostages in the end managed to disarm him. They then captured him, and according to one account, they did this because he was hungry and wanted to eat. And then apparently he said and pleaded with them, "Mujhko chhod do, mujhko mat pakdo." What do you make of that?
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, he's clearly not one of those trained, dedicated terrorists that the Lashkar is capable of producing. He is obviously somebody who's been picked up, given a little bit of training, and said, "You go out, do this." Probably the family would be suitably looked after, and there are several of those, almost mercenaries who are willing to come out and do this kind of thing. And they come into this probably not knowing what is going to happen, accepting that they will all be told that they will go up to heaven for whatever they are trying to do. So I don't think that this man is a very important element in the whole terror operation that we are talking of.
In which case, how important, how significant a capture is this?
Sorry?
In which case, how significant is his capture? How important is it that we've got him alive?
No, it's almost as if he wanted to be caught alive. You know, it's almost like, if I might say, the Lashkar or the ISI was flaunting the fact that they could do what they wanted and they were willing to do that. He said what he had to. He's willing to take the consequences. And you find, I mean, as far as it's carrying a message which he is doing, and it's a chilling message that I want to kill all Hindus, etc. And I think the idea was to provide that kind of an impression. And I'm sure the interrogation is not going to lead to any great revelation of what the Lashkar's plans and ideas are.
I'm particularly interested in what you said just now, that the interrogation will not lead to any great revelation of Lashkar plans. Can you explain why you've come to that feeling or conclusion? Because there's a lot of hope in Delhi that he'll reveal a lot.
Yeah, he may, but he may even also mislead you with a lot of things. Because I don't think he falls into the normal profile of a terrorist. I hope I'm wrong, because I mean, they're not going to send a trained terrorist, and he would of this kind and allow himself to be caught by 3 village defense committee members in the manner, not even firing a shot. You know, the whole thing looks like a little bit of a, I mean, lack of effort on his part to achieve what he wanted. I think he wanted to send a message. We have come in, we are a group of 4, we don't even know if the figure that he gives is right. They've killed 2 BSF Jawans, and he says that I've come with a message that I want to kill all Hindus, I'm ready. I mean, it's the chilling message rather than the capture of the person. But I don't think he's privy to what the Lashkar's ideas are.
In other words, therefore, he knows only what limited amount his handlers and his trainers have told him. He won't be a source of great information for our intelligence. Is that right?
That's what I believe, but I hope this is a case where I hope I'm wrong.
Let's come to his background first. It emerges that one of his brothers teaches at the Faisalabad Government College, whilst another brother runs a hosiery business. His sister is said to be a student. This background is very different to the stark poverty associated with Ajmal Kasab. What does that background suggest to you as a former IB chief?
It only confirms my impression that he is not really one of your dedicated cadres. It's either that he feels that he is what I might call somebody who can't live up to his family's expectations. It's someone who says that, okay, what I can do with my life is probably make a sacrifice about it, and in the process earn some kind of a name and whatnot. He certainly is not the kind of profile that you would expect a dedicated terrorist from. I mean, I don't think he has a background with any seminary or been involved in that kind of activity. So I would be careful in judging what he's capable of. What exactly is the role that the ISI or the Lashkar has for him, I can't say. But it's worth talking to him. It's worth getting information, not so much about the inner plans of the Lashkar, but what is the broad plan of action Pakistan is in. Because I think I mean, allowing yourself to be caught itself, I think, is a matter of thing. But there's a message here that we will do what we like. It does not matter in terms of human beings. It doesn't matter in what the governments in India or elsewhere think about it. So I would think that there is a more sinister angle to this rather than an individual indulging in a terror act.
What do you think is that sinister angle? Because this is one terrorist incident, the Udhampur one, that happened just 9 days after Gurdaspur. Do you get the feeling that we're seeing a deliberate revival of militancy and terror?
Oh yes. I mean, I firmly believe that in a sense you have a re-energized Pakistan today. If you talk, I think the ISI has become even more activist or aggressive as the case may be, and I think the China-Pakistan nexus, and particularly the China-Pakistan economic corridor, has given a tremendous lease of life as far as Pakistan is concerned. In a sense, they are now willing to, flaunt their new arrival on the scene, and that's not only because of China. Even in West Asia today, Pakistan vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia has improved its position. It's by and large finding itself much better placed than it was. And I think this is an occasion, let us give India something to remember, if I might use that term. The question is, what can India do? I mean, they recognize the strategic confusion that exists. India is trying its level best to hold talks. It's trying to ensure a certain peaceful way to resolution of disputes, etc. But what are you to do in the face of provocation? I mean, it's really putting India on the back burner. On the back foot, sorry. Yeah.
Can I ask you about those talks that are... Yes, I was going to say, can I ask you about the NSA level talks that are proposed for the 23rd, 24th of August? In these circumstances, where you believe that militancy is deliberately being stepped up, in the background against which you believe you have an energized Pakistan, should the talks go ahead?
I think our position has been that talk is better than fight. The point is, I have always been, when I was NSA, not very happy about talks at the prime ministerial level. But below that, I think it's worthwhile having talks, not so much to achieve a kind of breakthrough as to get an understanding of what's going on. When I was the NSA, we didn't the two NSAs never discussed this. But the heads of the intelligence agency, both of the RNAW and the IB, did meet their counterparts, etc. So there's nothing wrong with talks. The point is that I don't think we should expect very much. And whether we take an aggressive stance, whether we produce all the evidence that we have, I don't think is going to have any impact on the side, because the ISI today the construct is very clear. They are there saying that, yes, I think we have a so-called right-wing government in India. I think this is a threat to Pakistan's existence, and we must do everything that we can to create problems for them. So, as long as that is the diktat, and now they are, as I said, shored up by the fact that China is with them. I think even the Americans are still looking towards them as far as Afghanistan is now friendly with them.
Okay.
I think this is the time and the occasion that they see to sort of teach India a lesson, if I might say so.
You're actually saying to me, are you, Mr. Narayanan, that the ISI, maybe the wider Pakistan army, is deliberately doing this to teach India a lesson?
Yeah, it's not that, I don't say that it is only to prevent talks, etc. But they've got a newfound confidence. This Thomas Schelling's theory of compellence in economics is being sort of distorted. They say, all right, we will do what we like to do. Let's see what happens on the other side. And we have a problem. I mean, we don't want to start a conflict of any kind. We are unwilling to sort of be seen as behaving in the manner that certain other countries behave. So they are trying to raise the ante, and our problem would be, how do we manage the situation without being seen as either too aggressive or too pusillanimous.
In which case, how do you, as a former NSA, respond to the great hope raised in India after the UFA talks? People believe that there's a possibility a chapter was being opened. Then we've had this sudden spate of militancy and cross-border firing, which you're interpreting as the ISI sending a deliberate message to India. How then do you interpret UFA?
I think Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, not only now, I was there when he used to talk discuss matters with Prime Minister Chandrasekhar, and during the Narasimha Rao days, etc. By and large, I think he's one of the leaders who would like better relations with India. But I think the civilian leadership in Pakistan has a problem. The army, and I think General Rashid has made it clear, He's brought back the Kashmir issue by saying this is the unfinished business of partition. So the army is certainly not going to bend to what Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif wants, nor is the ISI. And even in international conferences, the ISI representatives are not sort of having the 24-character strategy of Deng Xiaoping, of hiding their light under a bushel. So we have a problem, and I think Nawaz Sharif has a problem. So irrespective of what happened in UFA, I think we will have to rethink what we need to do.
Now, you're talking about a need to rethink what we're going to do. Kiran Rijiju, the Minister of State for Home, has told this channel earlier this evening that India will raise the capture of this Pakistani terrorist at the UN. We will actually make the UN aware of the full testimony and the full evidence he's given us. Is that a wise step on our part, or do you fear that this might actually give UN prominence to an issue that we don't want raised at the UN level?
No, I mean, if you've got somebody from Pakistan who admits to being a Pakistani and who admits to having said this, it certainly buttresses our claim that we are victims of Pakistani aggression of one kind or the other. But if you think that the international community will immediately sort of blacklist Pakistan and whatnot, as long as, I mean, today I think China will block out anything that you want to do against Pakistan. I think the Americans are half-hearted, and therefore it will be a good play in the UN. We can always use it subsequently in our talks of various kinds. But if you're looking for concrete results, I'm afraid I'm not very sanguine.
What you're really saying is, whether you talk about any outcome of talks between the two NSAs, or any hopes that you may have if you take this matter to the UN, actually there's not much India can do, and there's not much prospect of us getting a favorable response. We've got a problem on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, in one word I can say yes, you're spot on as far as that is concerned.
Would you also say that this is now becoming a very serious problem, and it will get worse and worse because there's little we can do about it, and energized Pakistan will use its opportunities to the full?
Yes, I do so, and the only caution I want to provide is that if there is a feeling that by taking very aggressive postures, sometimes during very aggressive words, Pakistan will back off, I think that's not going to take place.
That is a distinct note of advice you're giving the Prime Minister and this government. Rhetoric is not going to frighten Pakistan.
I'm not giving advice to the Prime Minister. I'm merely, as a long-term analyst of Pakistan and the geopolitical situation, I think we need to be careful that what could apply when we discuss with other countries does not necessarily apply to Pakistan because of varied factors. I'm not trying to go into a blame game, but try to position ourselves in a situation that we are not caught off guard. We cannot afford a major conflict because that is going to be a problem. So what do we do next? I think we need to think about it. Talks, we'll continue the talks, that's of course expected, but I don't think that's going to lead to anything. What next? But that I leave to the people in Delhi.
Well, let me ask you that question, because you've twice or thrice in this interview said we need to think carefully about what next. Do you have any ideas, even if fledgling ones, about what could be the possible next steps? Because as you say, India has a serious problem, so what could be the possible next steps?
Yeah. I mean, one is, of course, I am very clear in my mind that we should not allow ourselves to be provoked. This is not I mean, I'm not questioning our capability, but I would question the timing. As I said, at this moment, unfortunately, to my mind, Pakistan has somehow gained additional space across the, whether it is, I mean, vis-a-vis China, the relationship is a lips and teeth relationship, and whatever we try vis-a-vis Pakistan will have something to do with China and vice versa. I mean, at every step you will find Pakistani diplomats and Pakistani ISI and other representatives talking of the newfound warmth between Pakistan and China. So we have that in mind. Clearly, the thing that we can do is how do we strengthen our defense? okay, it might be that you may always taking a defensive posture, but we need to improve our counter-terrorism grid. We need to be able to sort of prevent our people from being killed, and we must make it cost ineffective for the Pakistanis to do what they are trying to do. What we should avoid is somehow get provoked into something where we are seen as aggressors, and then of course the entire Indian position that we have never taken an aggressive stance unnecessarily or attacked another country will go by the...
I want to pick up on when you said we need to improve our defenses, and I want to use that as an opportunity to go back to the circumstances surrounding this particular terrorist. It seems that this particular terrorist, Usman Naved or Qasim or whatever his name is, first entered Kupwara maybe as long ago as a month or even 40 days ago. But then he retreated back to Pakistan because his guide didn't turn up. Subsequently, he and a colleague re-entered India a second time 12 days ago. Does that suggest to you that terrorists can enter and leave relatively easily, thus belying the army's claim that there's been no infiltration in 2015?
No, in Jammu and Kashmir, in some ways Jammu and Kashmir has a far better defense in depth, so to say. They have a 3-tier counterintelligence grid, which has been pretty successful, but there are chinks all the time in the system. I'm surprised that this man could make 2 trips during a period of a month or little or that. But in the riverine areas, it's possible. He may not have come by the way that he's talking of. And unless when it's clear where he came from, it's not possible to say whether it was a failure or whether, there are places where you could pass through. But the point is that one expects that people who pass through are caught. Now, I'm more surprised not so much that he entered, and then when you enter, you have guides. I mean, they're mercenaries. They're not sleepers or anything of that kind, who will provide them. But normally, we are able to catch them by the 2nd or the 3rd tier in Jammu and Kashmir. But that is not the case in Punjab, and I think that's one of the lessons that Punjab should now have. But in the absence of that, I'm a little worried why he was not caught. I mean, they've got this 3-tier system. Why was he not caught is something that they should look into and find out whether there are people helping them through this in that manner. But more important is that we should expect many more, and if there are issues of this kind, because one thing that is coming out is Pakistan is looking at India's so-called vulnerabilities. And when I say vulnerabilities, I'm not merely talking about a weak border, but a weak border defense, but also weaknesses. For instance, in the Punjab, I think they're trying to exploit the fact that in recent years, the government has sort of weakened its resolve to fight militancy and terrorism. The drug menace has sapped some of the energies. The state forces are at a poor ebb both in terms of morale and whatnot. The situation in Jammu and Kashmir, I mean, I don't want to comment on this, but I think this alliance between the PDP and the BJP does create discordance, if I might say so, in the relationship. That could well be exploited. So I think these are the factors that we need to do, because I think we need more defense rather than aggression. That's why.
One more question. I noticed that the Udhampur and Gurdaspur terror incidents happened some 8 or 9 days apart. In addition to your concern about India's vulnerabilities along the LOC and the border coming through, are you also worried that the fact that these 2 terror incidents happened 8 days apart could suggest some sort of intelligence lapse or failure?
No. I've been an intelligent man and have been attacked for intelligence failures all my life. So I don't want to talk of intelligence failures. But I'm glad that you raised it, because I think the new problem that we're going to face is the long-time effort of the ISI to link the Khalistani militants with the Kashmiri militants. Now, that is a major issue. And I would say that militancy or new militancy in Punjab would be the camphor that will ignite the jihad in Kashmir. So I think we need to look at that, and our intelligence agencies must be careful about what's happening behind the scene, trying to bring the, because in the West, for instance, I find a great deal of consolidation of all the so-called Pakistani groups, some amount of linkages with the Kashmiri militants, etc. I think this is the problem. We were worried about this in the late 80s and the early 90s, but I think it didn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen again, but I think we need to be on our guard.
But what you're saying as a former head of IB as well as a former NSA is that we need to be particularly concerned about the situation in Punjab. We ought to be particularly concerned about the possibility of linkages between Khalistani militants and Kashmiri militants, because this would be in Pakistan's interest to exploit and ignite, and we mustn't fall into the trap of letting them do it because we are becoming complacent or for some reason our guard is down.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better than what you said just now.
One last question to you before I end, and it's a very quick question. How do you respond to the article published just a few days ago at dawn by the former head of the Pakistan Federal Investigative Agency, Tariq Khosa, who very clearly explained the evidence in great detail that Pakistan has that proves that Ajmal Kasab and the LET terrorists were responsible. He pointed out that they were trained in Sindh, that the casings of the explosive they used were discovered in Sindh, that the engine of the dinghy they used was imported from Japan to Lahore and sold by a Karachi sports shop, the operations room was in Karachi, and much, much more. And he ended by saying, Pakistan has to deal with the Mumbai mayhem planned and launched from its soil. This requires facing the truth and admitting mistakes. How do you, as a former IB head and a NSA chief, respond to that article?
I think Mr. Khosa has a reputation of being a very dedicated and straightforward person. I do not know the reasons why he was removed. We were happy after 26/11 when he was to be the principal investigator into the whole issue. We were sure that there would be a great deal of effort, dedicated effort on his part. Maybe that was one of the reasons why he was removed. What prompted him at this stage to come out in public and confirm many of the things that we knew about Pakistan's role and what they did, etc. But one thing which I at least did not know was the fact that there were many more persons who are adrift in Pakistan who were linked to the 26/11 conspiracy, about whom we had not been. We were all concentrating on the 6 or 7 persons, starting with Lakhvi, on the coin. So I think in the next round of talks, or at least in the NSA round of talks, they should really ask what are you doing about these people? If Lakhvi is beyond the pale, at least some of the others could be prosecuted for what they are doing.
Absolutely, Mr. Narayanan.
So. I think Khosa...
I'm running out of time, but I want to point out that what you're referring to is a very important sentence that so far the media hasn't picked up, but it was there in Mr. Khosa's article, where he says the Pakistan authorities should not forget that the FIA declared various other facilitators and operatives as fugitives in this case. And he then added, the trial will not be over with the disposal of those presently under arrest or on bail. The other missing links need to be uncovered after the absconders are arrested. And he added, this case will not be over soon. You're referring to that new revelation from Khosa that there are many more people in Pakistan, many more links.
Yeah, that's what I say, and I wish Khosa was dealing with investigations here. We would have welcomed such a forthright and such a brilliant investigator.
That's a very high measure of praise that you're giving him, particularly when you speak as an Indian former NSA. You mean that, do you?
Yeah, I certainly mean that, and because I think investigation is a very difficult business. I mean, intelligence and investigation, I don't know which is worse in that respect, but to be able to do that, to unravel the strands, particularly when I presume that the state apparatus would be opposed to it, I think requires a tremendous amount of ability apart from the resolve and dedication.
Mr. Narayanan, I want to have to leave it there. My thanks to you for having agreed to give us this interview and to put into perspective all that we've so far discovered, as well as to put into perspective the importance of this particular terrorist we've captured, or whether in fact he might be a little misleading and perhaps not quite the crack tough terrorist we've taken him to be.